Hello and welcome to the Product Experience. This week we talk to Partho Ghosh. He's the Vice President of Products at Uberall. Partho shares how he used PLG to mobilize growth in companies he's worked in. But just before that, we have a very special announcement with Randy Silver and a special guest.
Hey guys, I'm here in Raleigh, North Carolina at Pandemonium, and we ran into one of our favorite people here. Mike, it's great to see you.
Awesome to see you too.
And there was a nice announcement yesterday. We get to hang out a little bit more often.
We'll be hanging out a lot more often because it was announced here at Pandemonium that Pendo has acquired Product Collective.
So Mind the Product and Product Collective, two great tastes that taste great together.
I love that. I think we're going to use that phrase from now on. But yeah, all working together now, which is awesome. It's something I'm really excited about. We, of course, have our conference industry, the product conference. There's MTPCon, Pandemonium, now all working together. So I'm excited about that.
So same thing as we have always done. Same Mind the Product, same Product Collective, but we're just bringing everything together. We're going to do more of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the exciting things for me is the fact that with Pendo behind everything, we have more resources to be able to put on bigger events, more events. There might be a version of the future where we could get more specialized in the events. You know, there's different types of products people out there. There are different people that come to mind the product and industry. Maybe we'll be able to create more specialized events in the future too. Lots of possibilities. That's the thing I'm really excited about.
Fantastic. Well, we're really looking forward to hanging out with you more often and to doing this in person more often.
Yeah, that's the one thing for me. I love getting together in person with product people, sort of bringing everybody together. So I'll be able to do that a lot more. I'm just excited to be able to work with the MTP team, Product Collective, joining into the Pendo fold. It's going to be really cool.
Excellent. Partho, thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. Yeah, nice and busy. Can't complain. We're close to the end of Q3, so it's a busy time right now, but it's always a good time.
Well, you're a returning guest, not to the podcast, but to the MTP stage. You've done that before. But for anyone who didn't manage to catch your session a couple years back, well, you've changed jobs, first of all, since then. But can you give us a quick intro? What are you doing these days? And how did you get into the world of product anyway?
Oh yeah, yes. When I spoke at MTP last, I was at Hootsuite. I was overseeing product and product led growth at Hootsuite. Hootsuite's kind of the leading social media management platform. I'm now at a company called Uberall. We're also a marketing technology platform, but we're focused on kind of multi-location platforms and what we call local SEO. So really ensuring that companies' profiles and how they rank on Google Maps and Google Search kind of connect together and are managed from one place. It's been fun. Like my team is pretty large. We're about 20 people strong actually, between product management, product design, and a few other ancillary kind of roles that we have and functions. But it's definitely been a lot of fun. I'm VP of product there, so overseeing the entire product department. And pseudo, I guess, VP probably head of product, whatever you want to call it. But it's been a real journey thus far because I'm coming into a role. They haven't really had this role in the past. So, and they're a pretty scaled up company, about 500 people. So coming in as kind of one of your first kind of like head of product roles at that scale is different. So we're putting a lot of different processes in place that sometimes are already there when you're 500 people, which is a different challenge. In terms of how I got into product, I actually, after I graduated from, so I have a comp sci degree. It was my first degree. I knew from day one I did not want to be a developer. I remember when I was like in university, hitting my head against keyboard, trying to solve a problem and just not liking it. And I was a developer for like 2 weeks at IBM here in Vancouver. And I made some good relationships there. I've done a couple of co-op sessions with IBM, but I realized that I wanted to go back. So I went back and got my business degree. And before I graduated, I got a product type role at IBM. I was a business analyst, which then turned into a product owner role, which I then coerced into a product management role. And that was 15-ish years ago.
Okay, so one of the things we wanted to talk about today was product-led growth. You've talked about the fact that this is something that you're really interested in. You've led it before. And it's a topic we've covered on the podcast before, but it's been a good long while. And, before we started recording tonight, Lily and I were talking, and we had different definitions of what we thought PLG was. And we're curious, what's your definition? What is the working definition of PLG today?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think it is evolving, right? That's the first thing, as most things in product and tech do. They evolve and they scale. I think the working definition most folks mind that I believe is time for change is that, product led growth is a GTM motion that involves a form of self-serve in some functionality, right? Whether that's a trial motion or a freemium motion, something that allows a customer to activate through on their own. And, whether or not you have a self serve revenue line in your profit and loss statement or not, I think that's kind of PLG. But I don't know if that should be the current definition of where we are today, right? I think PLG has been around for about what, 6, 7 years now, let's call it.
Mhm.
I think today it really is a combination, in my opinion, of kind of how companies and products are bringing a product led mindset to their product, whether you're doing a self serve motion or if you are going through a sales led company and sales led motion. How is your product and its product team bringing data informed product management in the mix? How are they thinking about growth funnels? If you're a sales led company, how are you thinking about product qualified leads and product led sales and acquisition funnels and demand gen and things like that? So I do think that the definition needs to evolve from where we are because PLG is not going to, at least the original definition, won't be a fit for every company. But I do think most SaaS organizations see the benefit in what PLG companies do, and they're trying to bring that product led sense into their own organization in some way.
Partho, there was a couple of terms or a term that you used there, the GTM motion, which I'm assuming you mean go to market motion.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. I'm trying to clarify all my acronyms. Yeah. So I think I said BPM is go to market motion. And then I also said PLS, which is not super familiar with everybody, which is product led sales instead of just pure, which I think a lot of folks see as subset of product led growth can be product led sales, but definitely not as common as, let's say, a freemium or a self serve trial.
And so when you think of, one of the disagreements that Randy and I had before we started talking to you was whether product led growth meant using or leveraging your product to get more growth, so to get more sales. So self serve is a very sort of classic, or freemium, I guess, is a very sort of classic mechanic for that. And perhaps referral in the D2C market as well could come under that banner as well. When you say product-led sales as a subset of product-led growth, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different ways that I've seen this, from my own experiences. I think number one, the most common is kind of looking at existing customers and new products or features that you build out and how you get customers to expand by themselves, right? Expand by using or trialing a new set of features in the product and then eventually having sales reach out to them because you've qualified them through the product itself. And one of the big benefits I think we see with that is instead of often the common trend is you wait for an annual renewal to come up, you talk about trying to renew with that customer and at the same time sell them more things and expand them. Well, what if in your product you're already testing out, hey, we have this net new feature that's coming out, we're going to give you the ability to try it for 30 days on your own. If you're interested, someone from our sales team will reach out and you can buy the product and have an upsell motion from there. So I think that's the existing kind of customer use case. Product led sales is also used in the acquisition funnel that, maybe you don't want to have a credit card gate and a self serve funnel where you capture a credit card. Instead, maybe you want to have a self serve funnel that eventually sets up qualifications, hopefully using some product usage data as well as kind of ICP or ideal customer profile data to say to sales that, hey, this might be a great fit customer for us, we should talk to them, and you set up those triggers for sales to kind of capture. And so I think that's bringing in parts of that product led growth motion that a lot of folks love, into maybe more traditional sales led first model.
Is this equally applicable for B2B and B2B2C as it is for B2C?
It's a great question. I mean, my focus definitely in my career has been both B2B and B2B2C, and not as much B2C. Although, from having these types of conversations with other peers, I think that they find that a lot of their B2C organizations are already so much further with PLG that they're ahead of the game in some senses. And so I think that they're looking at a lot of the traditional models that are there and capturing and monetizing customers through typically a freemium motion in B2C. And so they obviously do have PLS in some senses, but for the most cases, it's pure self-serve.
We've kind of gone like right into the detail with some of this stuff, but just kind of taking it back a little bit, like what are the sort of fundamental things that you need in place as an organization to take this sort of approach with your product development?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is in the heart of it. The most difficult part is you could try and do all these things from a bottoms up approach of I'm reading all these books or articles on PLG and we should go and do it. Like people are having success with it. The reality is, I think that this is something that needs to start from the top, and I'm hoping that that top is your CEO and kind of going down from there. My own experiences and being at places where you had, I've overseen product growth functions where I was the head of product growth, or overseeing kind of even growth marketing was part of that in some companies, but PLG wasn't bought in across the board from an executive point of view. And so even though I had a pretty large team trying to go and drive like PLG in a very meaningful way with a decent amount of budget, in the end, the funnel was broken in the company because that wasn't the focus through and through. And so we didn't have that buy-in from the top. There wasn't a mandate to say why we want to go down this path of PLG, whether it's better, LTV to CAC ratio, so lifetime value divided by customer acquisition costs, or just customer acquisition costs in general. There's a myriad of reasons why you'd want to try out PLG, but if it wasn't bought in from the exec level down, it's going to be really hard to actually do it successfully. In the end, product led growth, although product is in the title, it's not product management led growth. It's really getting your entire company to rally around the product and using the product to drive growth. And it sounds a lot easier in practice than it actually is in theory. Now, obviously, one of the biggest challenges is, having a sales team and a CRO that's understanding how PLG or PLS or whatever version you want to call out, how it can help the entire company and how it can help their own teams. And really, that buy in is really critical, in my opinion. I think without that buy in, you aren't going to get very far. And I've unfortunately learned that the hard way. I've spent, a year and a half, 2 years going through one motion only to realize that I didn't have the right buy in the end. And that's kind of hard when you look back. But yeah, that's the most important thing, I think, from the top.
And you mentioned that, like, we see other businesses have success with this, and so the classic thing is to go, "Well, look at what that business did." Like, we need to emulate that, like, not necessarily copy it, but we need to have the same environment that allows us to experiment and innovate with the way that we're going to market in the way that that business did, and come up with our thing that, really helps us grow and scale. How do you then, like, when you see that happening and you've got the excitement of the business and everyone's on board, but you mention as well, it's not like product management led growth. It also requires, I guess, mainly marketing to be on board, but potentially sales as well. Like, how do you get everyone rallied around this as an operational mode of working?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I would say that I personally think you do need more than just marketing buy-in. I think you need to have CS buy-in and account execs to buy in, and your sales team and your customer success teams to really buy in as well. Obviously, operationally, you need to have your FP&A teams involved and interested. The biggest thing I'll call out is that being really honest with yourself as a product leader. If you're coming into a new organization, this is one of the focuses you want to drive, or maybe you've been a product leader at a company for a while and you think PLG or some form of it could be interesting to your company, you have to be really honest with yourself and your team of where they are at in terms of a couple of things. Number one, is your product ready for a self-serve motion or for more self-serve ability in the product? Like a lot of products, use a lot of people to actually power what happens, right? Whether it's turning on feature flags, whether it's enabling parts of the product for customers to go and use. There's a lot of companies out there that still use human capital to do a lot of that work. And so really understanding how good your product is really important. If you have, sorry for the language, if you have a shitty product, and a lot of folks do, that's about, well, it's a pretty big blocker to the product led growth motion. And that might be one of those things you realize, it's going to take us at least a year to really drive a good product experience before we could actually go and test the self-serve thing out. And a lot of folks skip that step. They go straight to the self-serve and they do this experiment thinking it's going to be successful. And inevitably, when it's a failure, they go and say, PLG is not right for us. It's like, well, no, you have a pretty crappy product that's not going to be able to hold on to, the self-serve motion. You also might not activate customers quick enough to some form of an aha or light bulb moment to really drive that motion in a viral way. The last thing I'll kind of call out here as well is vice versa. If you have a crappy product and you're doing really well, it might be because you have a kick-ass sales team, right? We know a lot of companies where, a lot of bad products get sold and do better than some of the companies that have a really great product, right? Because their sales can sell. And that's a good thing in a lot of cases. That's like kudos to those sales teams. But that might be the superpower of that company. And so trying to bring in this PLG motion might go against the complete grain of that company and what's made them successful. So I really think it's about being honest with yourself as a product leader when you're asked to bring in this kind of thinking or emotion of whether or not it's right for the business. Instead of just saying, look at all these amazing SaaS businesses. I want to be like them. Let's go and do it. Right. So that would be my thought process on it.
And I guess based on that, sometimes I do think sometimes we hear about these terms and these approaches to things and we're like, we're not doing it right unless we're doing product-led growth or, whatever it is, continuous discovery. Like we can beat ourselves up about, not doing these things. But from what you're saying, actually there's a time and a place for this approach. And so you don't want to do it when you're not ready.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think you brought up a really great example, right? Continuous discovery or being even just data informed in your product discovery. I am of the belief that really good product management principles need to be there. And no matter what company you are, PLG or not, having great product management principles and a foundation is going to make your product experience and your product better. And so, in terms of whether or not it's the right time or place, my argument is there's always a good time and place, and that was yesterday for that kind of set of thinking and good product management skills. But I think the time and place question of like understanding what your company's really good at, its unique differentiators, and if some of them are its people, or if some of the differentiators are its sales team being able to outsell other sales teams and really be able to pitch in a different way. That might be something you think about from a time and place point of view of like, okay, maybe it's not the right time right now. I know a lot of companies where their people and how amazing their customer success teams are is a huge part of the value prop, which is great. But is that the best competitive differentiator for a PLG company? Maybe, maybe not.
And do you think that people hear product-led growth and they assume that it means the sales team are all losing their jobs and that, all the customers are just gonna be magically found through specific features and flows and things like that?
Well, I hope not, but I mean, I've definitely been there where that's been the case. And a lot of the pitch, I'm proud of the fact that my current company at Uberall that hasn't been the case because we've really been very clear on our message that, what we're trying to do, at least from a product strategy. I think they only see the benefits from a sales perspective. But that's also me going through a lot of learnings and refinement of how to kind of bring PLG into motion at companies. I've done it wrong in the past where you basically did have this wall and barrier of like sales versus product, and that was not a lot of fun. But I would think that in this new world, especially when you look at some of the new GTM tools that are out there, things like Clay and a lot of the data tools that sales teams are using these days lines really well with some of this PLG motion and thinking. And so I think that, giving more product usage data to qualify, prospects, leading with the product first instead of custom tailored demos. I would hope that if the products are good and the experience is good, that sales are doing way better because of it. And I think that really great sales teams see that and they know that, okay, this is going to make our lives better and we get to focus on bigger and better things because of it. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Pendo, the only all-in-one product experience platform.
Do you find yourself bouncing around multiple tools to uncover what's happening inside your product?
In one simple platform, Pendo makes it easy to both answer critical questions about how users engage with your product and take action.
First, Pendo is built around product analytics, enabling you to deeply understand user behavior so you can make strategic optimizations.
Next, Pendo lets you deploy in-app guides that lead users through the actions that matter most.
Then, Pendo integrates user feedback so you can capture and analyze how people feel and what people want.
And a new thing in Pendo, session replays, a very cool way to experience your users' actual experiences.
There's a good reason over 10,000 companies use it today.
Visit pendo.io/podcast to create your free Pendo account today and try it yourself.
Want to take your product-led know-how a step further? Check out Pendo and Mind the Product's lineup of free certification courses led by product experts and designed to help you grow and advance in your career.
Learn more today at pendo.io/podcast. Rich Mironov has this great line about when he goes into companies and if the sales is selling the wrong thing, if they keep coming back requesting features that don't exist or aren't aligned with the strategy, he rewrites sales incentives to make sure that everything that they only get rewarded for things that fit the ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
It sounds like what you're saying is in a company that is practicing PLG properly, sales is getting qualified leads. They're happier from that perspective, and it doesn't mean they're not going to come back to product and say, "Hey, we are hearing this, we need this." But it's a very different type of relationship. It's not a combative do this to make the one sale. It's help us with our conversion percentage. We're hearing this consistently. It's almost product qualified feedback.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point that Rich brings, and I've seen that myself. I really believe, especially when you talk about product-led sales, that I myself have worked with CROs and FP&A to build out spiffs to test product market fit and really get
Sorry,
sales.
Spiffs.
Sorry, spiff. What I actually don't know what spiff stand for. But it's basically sales incentives, like sales programs where you get bonused on, the leaderboard per se, or reaching a certain threshold with a certain product. And so, getting sales to test something new or try a new product out or a new trying to get them to adopt something that's not there today, it's not the easiest thing, right? So putting the spiff in place to incentivize them to try and do so, alongside putting in kind of that product usage data as part of that, it's been a success recipe for me for sure. And I think that that's a good point that Rich has brought up, that you almost do have to kind of rewrite some of that to really drive the behavior in the right direction. I also think that's important from a just a general experimentation and product led kind of thinking at sales led companies, that product managers need to ask for those kind of things to see if their products actually get adoption and a product market fit, because sales can be so used to just selling what's there and they make good money just selling what's there doing anything net new can be disruptive, doesn't
Mm.
it's the wrong thing. And so how do you persuade them to sell a different thing or a different way? That's definitely one big way of doing that.
Partho, can you talk us through some of your sort of direct experience with developing product-led growth sort of tactics, or I don't know what you would call them. Sometimes they're features, tactics, flows, whatever it is, and kind of how that came about and yeah, whether it was successful
Yeah.
and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, anytime you think about PLG and product led growth, you Google it online. I think the first thing that's going to come up probably for you is onboarding or activation. That's typically where the quote unquote books start. And for good reason. I think that getting, the time and time again you see, and especially in B2B SaaS, you see that early activation equals long-term retention, right? And the faster that a customer is activated, the faster they start seeing value in your product, the stickier that customer becomes. And so, with that being the baseline kind of theory, looking at activation and onboarding is often the first step in all of that. And I believe that activation starts on your website. It doesn't start in after you've signed up to the platform. It's always, the first touch point for the customer with your product experience. And I think that is the website often. And so, I'll give some experiences from Hootsuite. Some of the things that we had learned was just how fast we had to activate customers when we were at Hootsuite. Setup moment for Hootsuite was setting up a certain number of social networks that you need to connect, because the value prop of Hootsuite was really scheduling posts ahead of time and sending it out to multiple networks really quickly. But if you don't connect those integrations quick enough to see that value thereafter, you're kind of hooped. And so we did a myriad of different tests to try and figure that out, from different home pages, many of which were kind of a waste of time because they didn't really improve things. We found that an actual homepage itself was quite critical. The Hootsuite originally, before I joined them, didn't have a homepage. So creating a kind of a launch pad for customers to come in and learn what they should do and what they could be doing better was really important. We tried activating and making some of the hard things easier by just being more playful. We actually brought in the brand's mascot, which is named Owly, as kind of I hate saying it out loud, but kind of like a Clippy. If you remember Microsoft Word and Clippy, it was there to kind of help guide you, and it was there to answer. Obviously, it turned into kind of an AI chatbot of sorts, but it got a lot of usage because customers loved that owl and its brand. And so that helped drive trial to paid conversion rate quite a bit. And talking about the website and activation, one of the things that we had seen from a data point of view that a lot of other SaaS businesses might disagree with was we actually put a credit card gate in front of the product. And that was because we found that, with the number of trials that we had at that company, you know, we needed to figure out quality of trials and signups much faster than we were. And having a credit card gate was a really solid way, without hurting number of trials too much, a really solid way of getting just better quality. And our trial to paid ratio, and that conversion rate went up quite a bit without the number of trials going down, that it was a net benefit for sure for the company. And so I say that story only because, from a product point of view, and for anyone that's listening, you're often told not to do these kind of things, right? When you read books and you read articles, people will say never put a credit card gate up front, never block things, but you have to test things for yourself and your own company. And I was very bullish on the fact that that would not work. But the team went and tested it. I said, yeah, absolutely. We should be testing everything. And that came out as a really huge winner for us. So, yeah.
I'm curious, admitting you were wrong about something, and you were director of growth there, you must have talked about this strategy with people. How did that happen? How did you deal with it with the other executives? How did you sell it afterwards? Or was it just, we've run a bunch of tests, we have evidence, or how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. There's a lot of, and Hootsuite wasn't a small company. It was about 1,500 people at the time when I was there. A lot of opinions, right, politically would come in, and even my own opinion, obviously, in this on this topic of like, I've done product growth before, and I've been in, product for X, Y, and Z years. Is this really a good idea? Should we go and do this? But the team feeling pretty bullish on the idea that we should at least test it and go through that. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Like the numbers will tell us in the end what's right, what's wrong. And this is also a challenge that a lot of companies, like for example, my current company, we couldn't do that as easily because we just don't have the traffic numbers that a company like Hootsuite had. Even my previous experiences before that, I've been at companies that had lots of traffic. You could do those kind of experiments. So you have to be a little bit cognizant of that. But to answer your question, like I think I'm one of those guys who really preaches like strong opinions, very loosely held. And I may have not been that way early in my career, but you definitely get humbled on this job. And so I think over time you just kind of realize that it's probably best for me to have loose opinions just so I don't have egg on my face anymore. But yeah, and so I'm all about if the team wants to come back and be more data driven, I'm all for it.
I think that's so true. All of the sort of like slightly more mature product people that I know, and myself included, are definitely more of the I don't know if it's going to work. Who knows? Like I can guess, but I'll probably be wrong. Whereas
It's
the younger folk tend to be a lot more like this is definitely going to work or definitely not going to work.
I saw some memes on that on LinkedIn of like great, like like your feelings and sentiment in a meme form of like over your career and your trends. Of like it was basically said your 20s, 30s, and 40s, but it was yeah, very, very true.
One of the other things I'm curious to know on the credit card trial, the gated trial that you did you model what you would need to happen before you did the experiment? So you would know, like, we need to get X amount of credit cards input in order for us to make up, like, what the difference would be.
Yeah, 100%. And that company, especially, were quite a bit more mature as an organization, and definitely at more scale. A couple of things that we knew. We knew our trial to paid ratios really well. We knew what each percentage lift to trial to paid would mean on the bottom line of our P&L or our profit and loss statement. And we knew the number that we had to hit for it to be a successful experiment. And we knew the numbers, in the end were revenue numbers and conversion numbers. And so we understood. We also put a premium on annual versus monthly, and we put a premium on obviously stickiness and kind of churn. But all things being equal, we absolutely knew what the number was, and it met it and then some. There was such a clear winner in the end.
Mm.
If I remember correctly, because it's going back a couple of years, we dropped in trials by about 15, 16%, if I can remember correctly. But our conversion rate for trial to paid ratio went from like, let's call it the 5% ish to 15 to 20 or 20-ish plus percent. So dramatically different. And I think that tapered off over time, but it never really went kind of below that 15 to 20% mark. So in the end, it was a clear winner. And it got us thinking about a lot of other things that we were doing. The most controversial being that at the time, we tested then our freemium motion to see the value of our free product and see what that was bringing. And we decided to turn off our free product actually and open up an easier way to our self serve. And so we kind of had to play that battle of, as we were looking at our free product, how we'd bring them into trials and what was the right fit. Knowing that we may have to build a new free product at some point, it was never we're going to kill free forever. It was never that idea. It was like, what would the right product be for free users? And that question came up just because of that win we had on the credit card gate.
Nice. So you talked earlier about how product-led growth doesn't mean product management-led growth. And one of the things I tend to hear or see is that product managers don't necessarily do that modeling side of things with experimentation. So when you're looking at things like this in, that organization, but also in Uberall as well, like what does the team around you look like? Who's involved, and how do you structure yourself in that sort of, I guess, cross-functional? It would be a cross-functional team, but like, is that like everyone across the organization, and who's leading the charge? Is it still product leading, or is it a different part of the organization?
It's a good question. I've seen it in a couple of different ways. I can explain it from what we're trying to do, at least at Uberall. But my answer would be that absolutely, I would say that when I've joined product organizations, one of the things that I often try to bring in is a lot more commercial thinking and just monetization thinking. Even for product managers that may never have like touched that part of, like, let's call it growth. And so whether or not that means that they need to be talking to FP&A and financial planning and kind of your CFO department more, getting more reporting and analysis available from a product revenue by product area or feature area. Sometimes setting these kind of things up for your product managers can be really meaningful. The other thing I often try to bring in is a North Star metric framework, which is always great to do, but it's hard to like follow up on. You kind of have to kick off, I think, the new year. We're doing this for 2025. We look at our North Star metric that we're trying to hit, how it is associated to revenue. Hopefully, your North Star metric is not revenue; it shouldn't be. And then understanding how a product area that a product manager oversees, how does it perform against the North Star metric? How does that product area improve the North Star metric? And we make those connections so that the product manager understands that if I improve these product usage KPIs, I inherently am improving the North Star metric and thus improving revenue in some sense. So I think there are structures that you can bring to your product team to help them get more closer to this modeling. Now, I do have product managers that are a lot more data driven and that will model themselves, or they understand, statistics in a different manner for split testing and things like that. So they can set up these types of tests, but they're a different breed, right? That's a bit of a specialty, I would say, for some of those PMs. One thing that I've always done in the past 3 or 4 companies I've been at is create a product analyst kind of sub department. So today we have one product analyst, which is not enough. We're actually, just a little small plug. We're hiring for another product analyst. If you're interested, go to the Uberall careers website. But yeah, we are looking. We are effectively doubling our department. But I think it's really important for product managers, product designers, and product marketers to be able to talk to someone on the data side that's dedicated to product usage and product in general. And so I definitely was spoiled at Hootsuite. Hootsuite was like the large. We had 6 or 7 product analysts under one senior manager who was amazing. And I think trying to get closer to those ratios that we had at Hootsuite would be the dream at my current company, and maybe in the future. That's definitely where I've seen it done the best. But I've also seen it at a smaller scale. I was at a company called Unbounce almost a decade ago. Unbounce is a conversion rate optimization platform. And so split testing and experimentation was in our DNA. Like, our product did that. And so a lot of our product managers needed to understand how that all kind of worked. And so they would do their own modeling. And I thought that was really unique. So maybe there's some learnings there for someone in terms of building a culture without having to hire a bunch of analysts.
When you're adopting this approach, Partho, how long does it take to really see results? How do you know that you're going in the right direction with it?
That's a great question. That's a hard hitting question in some senses, because it does take some time. I think that you can see improvements in how your product managers are perceiving the changes and improving their day to day kind of job, the way that they talk, the way that they showcase and discuss results. I'll just give my examples at Uber. I've been really proud of the team and the changes they've made. I am always very transparent in terms of talking to the entire product department of where I see us in terms of product management kind of maturity. And I told them, like, I think we're a 3 or 4 out of 10 right now, and we need to be at an 8 or 9 out of 10 a year from now. And so we made a plan of action to how we were going to get there. And, even with some of the changes in terms of how we show prototypes, how we talk about new ideas when we do our one pagers, we're very much starting with success metrics first, starting with outcomes, starting with the data, we are very much focusing on outcomes and not outputs. That was a big change. I think a lot of orgs need to look into is a lot of product can still be very output focused and not outcomes focused. And so within 3 or 4 months, I've heard from a lot of other stakeholders, a lot of execs that, wow, they've seen a shift in just how products are talking and thinking. And so you can kind of see successes through and through. But to answer your question, I do think it takes a solid year before you really start to see the real improvements. Because if you're in this journey, you're going to have a lot of baggage. And so there's probably 6 months of development baggage that you have to get through before you really get to put your own stuff in place. And then you get to start executing on your own strategy. And so after that, you hope that you can showcase some forward movement 6 months thereafter, which is now a year in total. So I do think it takes a solid year before you really start seeing some of the real impact. But I said it was a hard hitting question because I know for myself and a lot of peers, I've seen a lot of peers. Like I think there's a lot of change that occurs from a product leadership point of view within, a lot of people moving jobs 18 months to 3 years. And I think sometimes it's tough to put a strategy in place and execute on it if that's the time you get, so to speak.
You mentioned at the top of the call that you are the sort of first or the head of product, VP product at Uberall. So, what does the structure look like there in terms of are you reporting then into a CTO or is there a CPO? And how is that like working? Because you said you need that sort of executive buy-in to this approach. So, were they all very au fait with product-led growth, or have they just entrusted all of this to you?
Definitely PLG was and just product led thinking was a big topic when I was joining the organization of they were looking for someone with that expertise and experience. So it was definitely something they had started with, I would say, which obviously got me interested. I think we're a bit of a unique case where it's actually been a couple of years where I have reported as CTO, but I do report to our CTO and she's quite product minded. Now we're both on the West Coast, and that's another reason for that. We're on the West Coast, and we get to work really closely with each other in terms of just time zones. We're a global company, so I'm up usually at 5 or 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, working with our EMEA counterparts. So, and our CEO and a lot of execs are on the EMEA side, so that's quite nice. But I will say that we had a new CEO join the organization right before I joined, and I meet with him every other week and quite close to discussing these things with them in that cadence. I think I'll just bring this up because founder mode has been a topic of sorts as of late. And one of the things I think founder mode tries to talk about are these like skip level ideas, right? And the idea around skip level meetings, I have them with our CEO all the time. And I don't think I'd be able to be successful in my job without that. So before this, yeah, I was either reporting directly to CPL or to CEO. There's quite a few years where I was reporting directly to CEO. And if these things change at scale, right? Who you report to at 100 to 200 people is very different of 500 to 1,500 people. So, and they all have their uniqueness, I would
Mm.
say. All of them have pros and cons uh, in every sense of the word.
I'm hearing a lot that there's a real trend towards either having a CTO or a CPO, and that basically being a CPTO job, and so having a very product-minded CTO or a very kind of technically minded chief product officer.
I have a controversial topic on that, which is my take is I think some of that's because after 2022, we went through a lot of change in terms of just a lot of layoffs that occurred and a lot of focus on margins. And so I understand that. I do think we'll see a world where that splits up again. I think if you're a SaaS organization, your product strategy, your company strategy is probably all around your product and technology. I do think that you need to have kind of those two, things be looked at least at scale. So I'd be surprised. I have seen it at 1,000 plus people companies, and I'm always kind of shocked by it. Of That I think that would be a scale where you'd have both a CPO and a CTO. But you're correct. You're seeing a lot more of that, and it's an interesting trend for sure.
Yeah. One to keep our eyes on. We'll have to come back in a couple of years and see if your prediction was correct.
Yeah, I think some of these things are cyclical at times.
You've kind of mentioned a couple of times, I think you mentioned a tool called Clay, and you mentioned some other tooling. Like, what does like the best sort of tooling setup, or what kind of are the fundamental tools that you need for like a product-led growth approach?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I mean, I think from the start, from a product management point of view, when I look at a product tech stack, I put a lot of emphasis onto product analytics and kind of digital adoption platforms. Where at Uberall we use Pendo. I've been a Pendo fan for a long time and used Pendo for a while. I know there's a lot of other tools that are similar, but yeah, just having that all in one where we kind of look at analytics and segments. That's a really important part is customer segmentation, and then tying kind of your digital adoption platform or your guides to that. We use the digital adoption platform part not just from an onboarding adoption point of view, but more so on the monetization side, which I feel is a sometimes a better use case for it, of like really getting customers to upsell or try new feature areas out through that platform. So I really think from a product stat point of view, that's really important. I would say an experimentation platform, depending on your traffic numbers. If you have the traffic to be able to really stand up split testing in a meaningful way, I think that's a no brainer. Those are products like Optimizely and a few others come to mind. And yeah, I mean, outside of that, there are things that product starts to get into depending on how mature your organization is from a PLG point of view. You might think about product led sales platforms or GTM platforms that combine product usage data alongside other kind of GTM tools, whether it's things like Clearbit and Sixth Sense and things like that. So you're starting to see like products like Pocus, for example, kind of combine the two of those things. I think Clay does that as well. I'm not as familiar with what's best in class in that area, but I definitely know that product gets a lot more involved, which is cool. I will say that one thing I've kind of soured on as much as my early career is this might be a controversial take. I find roadmap tools a little overrated. I find that most of my companies and organizations I've been at over the last 5+ years, every scaled company that I've seen just ends up using slides and sheets in some way to get that job done. Even if they have a tool in the background, they still end up using slides to make it beautiful and to communicate it. And so we do use a roadmap tool, but I question the efficacy of a product roadmap tool. But I'll leave it there.
I love it. We've had two controversial takes in the in one episode. That's great.
Awesome.
Partho, thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on, and anything I can do to help out, let me know. But yeah, it was a fun chat.
Thank you so much, Partho. The Product Experience hosts are me, Lily Smith, host by night and Chief Product Officer by day.
And me, Randy Silver, also host by night. And I spend my days working with product and leadership teams, helping their teams to do amazing work.
Luron Pratt is our producer, and Luke Smith is our editor.
And our theme music is from product community legend Arnie Kittler's band, POW. Thanks to them for letting us use their track.